Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're going to be replacing the factory door speakers on this 2017 Chevy Colorado. Now in this install we're going to show you how to remove the door panel and factory speaker. We'll head over to the bench to show you the new speaker that we're going to be installing, including the bracket and harness adapter, and we'll come back here to get everything reinstalled. Let's get started. Now before we get started here, a couple of things to note. Depending on the trim level truck that you have, there may be Bose or non-Bose. If you have Bose, you have to be very conscientious of that because there's only specific speakers with the right impedance that will work really well with a factory Bose amp. Because you have Bose, not every aftermarket speaker is going to work well in this location. If you have non-Bose, any aftermarket speaker will fit as long as it's a 6x9. Now, we have Bose in our install here today, so we'll make special notes of that once we head over to the bench. Additionally here, we also have tweeters in the dash. Customers opted not to replace the tweeters and simply just replace the 6x9 mid-bass speaker here in the door. Regardless, we'll link all the parts in the description in case you also want to replace your tweeter as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and remove this door panel. It is a stubborn door panel, one of the harder ones to remove because it doesn't hang on the door itself. There's actually clips up all around, and the top clips are some of the hardest to remove. There's a screw inside this little cubby here. We need to remove that. There is a little cover over it, so I have a little angled pick tool. There's a little place where you can get that pick tool in and pull on out. Remove the 7mm. Next here, there's two 7mm behind this panel. We have to remove the top portion, your switch panel. There's a clip here and a tab on this end, so you have to start in the back. Disconnect your two harnesses. Now our back clip did fall off down in the door, but we can snag it once we pull off the door panel. Unless you can see it from up here, you'll want to put it back in before you reassemble. Next here, there's going to be multiple clips holding this in. You can kind of get from the back side to push those clips out. You don't want to fracture this panel, so take your time. There's going to be about 4 or 5 clips along this one. To remove those, it's going to expose 2 7mm down in those channels. That is one tough panel to remove, so I just took my time. I actually used a little pick tool to help relieve these clips, but there's 5 along here. Just ripping on them will rip these clips out of the housing and they'll stay in. It's not a big deal as long as you can still reattach them, so take your time. You don't want to fracture this panel. We're going to have 2 7mm along the bottom of the panel. Now I do have a panel popping tool. You can use a vinyl panel removal trim tool as well. Just be very careful and take your time to unsnap the clips up and around the panel. I like to start in the kind of that bottom corner. There's a place to kind of get your fingers in there to start unsnapping the panel. Alright, so we got the panel removed here, and here a good view of those clips. Essentially, if you get a screwdriver and pick tool and try to push this center tab down, it helps relieve that a little bit. That gives us great access to our factory speaker. Let's go ahead and remove it. There's a 7mm at the top and clips at the bottom. So at this point of time, with our speaker now removed, unhook the harness. Let's head over to the bench to show the parts that we're going to need for our install. Alright, so here at the bench, now the parts that we're using for our install, first and foremost is the speakers that we're going with. Now our factory speaker here happens to actually be a little over a 1 ohm impedance because we have Bose. And we know that because when we flipped it over and tested the resistance between both terminals, we showed about 1. And Powerbase makes a great OEM OE replacement speaker. This one is unique because it's a mid-range driver, so there's no tweeter in it because we have to integrate with our factory amplifier. And this one is a dual 4 ohm speaker, kind of like a subwoofer. It has 2 sets of speaker leads here. And essentially here they give you a few wiring harness adapters so you can wire it in the correct configuration based on your factory application. In our case with Chevy Bose, we'll need to wire both sets of terminals. You have to hook up both sets, but we'll wire them in parallel. So positive to positive, negative to negative. That's going to give us about 2 ohms. We measured it with the other speaker. If we just put any 4 ohm speaker in here, unfortunately what that's going to do is it's going to be less sensitive to the factory amplifier, and thus the volume is going to be significantly quieter. If you don't have a factory amp and you have the base stock audio system, you don't see that Bose logo anywhere in your vehicle, you're in the clear and you can put basically any 6x9 in the front door, whether it's a component set with a mid-range in the door and tweeter in the dash, or a coaxial all-in-one unit with a tweeter mounted in it. It'll all work just fine. Now to integrate our new speaker in the factory location, we do need a bracket adapter. This is the Metra 82-3004, and we're using the PAC AI SH3802. We can also link the Metra version in the description in case you want that instead. They also make one of these as a 6.5 instead of a 6x9. So if there's a 6.5 set that you want to install, we can link that bracket differentiation down in the description as well. First thing we need to do is get our speaker mounted up in the bracket here using the supplied hardware, and then we'll work on our wiring after. Alright, so we got our screws in here. Now the holes in the bracket are a little big, so the screws don't have much to bite on. You can replace the screws that come with your speaker with a heavier set so they bite better. We also just put on the little nutserts that come with our speaker, and that's going to give it plenty of bite so it doesn't rattle loose here in the door. Now we're going to flip it over and start working on our wiring. As I said before, it has 2 coils, and each coil is 4 ohms. So when we wire it in parallel, we'll see about 2 ohms or a little bit less than that. We're trying to get as close to the factory impedance as possible here. So we have to hook up both, and we're going to use the harnesses supplied by the speaker manufacturer. If you had non-Bose, or you just have a single coil, meaning only one speaker terminal, so one set of speaker terminals on your speaker, you can simply just plug in the only set of speaker terminals to the harness adapter, and it's a plug-and-play unit. Navigating and trying to integrate with this factory Bose amp, that's why we have these 2 sets. We're wiring them together, positive, positive, negative, negative. And since obviously that's not going to wire, we'll cut these ends off and wire those and solder them straight in here. Now, if you didn't know how to solder or don't have the means, they do supply some butt connectors with it, which you can simply just crimp on instead of solder like we did. But with a little bit of heat shrink and time, looks really nice. All right, so we got everything loomed up here. Now, we do like to treat this door speaker bracket with a little bit of sound deadening around the edges. We don't want this to rattle because there's only anchor points at each end. So we're going to add a little bit of sound treatment to this before we head back to the car to get it installed. These last 2 harnesses that we didn't talk about are if you have to wire the coils in series. Since we're not wiring in series here in parallel, these won't be needed. We can set these off to the side. All right, so we have finished our speaker preparation here at the bench. You'll notice there's 2 additional holes down here which we can tap in 2 7mm self tappers just give it a nice additional snug. But with all this on here, it's going to prevent the bracket from rattling. Let's head to the car to get everything installed. Alright, so everything's all nice and installed here. We got our 2 little extra tappers down there. So at this point of time, test. Always test before you reinstall this door panel, especially this one since it's so hard to take off, just to ensure that everything's working properly. And then once you do so, you can go ahead and reassemble in reverse order. Alright, that's about it for this door speaker install. If you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. As mentioned before, if you're also interested in replacing the tweeter, we'll link those parts also in the description of the video so you can install a tweeter up there or do a full 6x9 component set with those recommended parts also in the description. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We will see you in the next video.